Yesterday it seemed the world was about to end. Dignity, as though it wouldn't last half a year. Yesterday disaster waited around the bend. Well, my friend, spring is here. Back in business and ain't it grand? Where the good times go. Yesterday things were out of hand. Now they're under control. Bye bye blues, so long adversity. Happiness, hello, hello, hello. Keep the status quo. Permanently so. Back again like a boomerang. Same old stand, same old game. Back in business with a bang. Let the good times roll. Yesterday it seemed we never would smile again, didn't it? No matter what we mentioned or how. Looked as though the fun was over till who knew when. That was then, this is now. Back in business and ain't it grand? Where the good times go. Yesterday things were out of hand. Now they're under control. Back to normal, back to usual. And the fun will soon. No more doom and gloom. No more busters blue. Back in business and overnight. In demand. Well, alright. Business is just dynamite. Let the good times roll.
Okay, and with that lovely intro, I'm going to go ahead and explain some stuff. So, I'm recording this on the 13th, partly because I found out that apparently the strike isn't going to, won't let me upload this until the 15th, not the 14th. So, I'm going to do a mini stream here, and I'm going to upload it on Uncle Thomas 2, and then once the strike goes, or once I'm allowed to upload again on the 15th, then I'm going to put this video up. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. This is going to be a mini stream. And, there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to be somewhat schizo about this, but we're going to try to go through the same way as a documentary would. So other than that clip, that was a clip from a movie that was actually directed by Roger Corman about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Ooh, excuse me. Which had Jason Robards Jr. For those that know, Jason Robards Jr. was a fairly big actor. He was in the movie, he's in the Watergate movie. I cannot think of it. All the President's Men, that's it. With Robert Redford and, oh shit, I can't remember. You know what? But yeah, he was in a lot of stuff. To go further from there, in general, you really have to kind of dig for a lot of this stuff. I mean, it is out there about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but it isn't really something that's well covered. So I'm going to try to lay out the basics, and then we'll kind of tell the story from there. So we're going to start out with kind of the larger scene. So there, you had New York City. Now, New York City, of course, being the place where we think of, where the mafia and the mob came from. And, a couple years on from this, February 14th, 1929 is when the massacre occurred. But before this, but after this, you had the commission and you had Lucky Luciano and everything else like that. So there were a lot of folks who were kind of cutting their teeth at this point. And obviously the St. Valentine's Day Massacre really helped out none other than Mr. Alfonso Capone, or Alberto Capone, I think. Anyway, and so we'll start with him. and then we'll kind of work our way around. But the situation that occurred is a lot of folks were out there hustling. A lot of folks, had to really fight for this imagined American dream, and this is really, this is really a story of immigrant group versus immigrant group, really. This is Italians versus, the Irish, primarily, and just vying for control. I hate to see it in ethnical terms like that necessarily, but I think it's important to say. To go further, let's go ahead and discuss some of the different characters in this this little play that we're going to be covering here. So we have Bugs Moran, who is the leader of the North Side Gang at this point, after the death of the original leader, or one of the main leaders of the North Side Gang, who was Dion O'Banion, who was killed in his flower shop by Capone's guys after Dion O'Banion had tried to rub out Al Capone. And it also killed his friend of the Sicilian Union as well. Which I think at this point, yes, it was a mafia organization, but they also had legitimate businesses as well. He was just an innocent bystander in a lot of ways. And that's not me defending it. I'm just saying is that that's what occurred. Basically, he came into a flower shop. Dion O'Banion loved flowers. They shook hands. They grabbed him by the arm. Bang, bang. And he was dead. After that, you had Vincent Rucci take over. I'm going to try to use the proper pronunciation here. But yeah, Vincent Rucci, or D'Ambrosio was his name, took over. He was killed, I believe, by Capone's men as well. Let me double check here on that. Let me check on Vincent Rucci. All right, I'm sounding more like Bela Lugosi here when I say that. Yeah, I went to suck your blood. Sorry, but yeah. Yeah, he's born in Chicago to Sicilian parents. Yeah, Vincenzo D'Ambrosio. That's it, Vincenzo D'Ambrosio. And let me see here. Yeah, Albert Kachalik. And I bet they're not going to show. Yeah, they're not going to show. Yeah, they're just going to say the North Side Mob. So we'll go ahead and cover this a little bit here. So it was originated from the Market Street Gang. And let's see here. Made up of pickpockets, sneak thieves, and labor sluggers working in the 42nd. Yeah, this was a big thing as well. The circulation wars. And this is something that I saw another YouTube video talk about. Was basically the North Side Gang came from folks that did a lot of. They were the muscle for. Let's see here. In this case, they were the muscle for I'm going to assume the Chicago Examiner. So there was a lot of this, competition going on between who is going to get more money by selling papers. Ironically, by saying this, though, is you get this because of another character here, Big Jim Colosimo. Now, there's a lot of, like I say, this is a very step-by-step sort of thing. So I'm going to try to be careful not to mention too many people at once. But we're going to go through the list of folks slowly but surely. Don't worry, we're going to get there. So to continue on here from that story is, so the North Side Gang started out being the muscle for the newspapers. And Dion O'Banion, was part of a satellite known as as a gang called the Little Hellions, apparently, and would develop valuable contacts with politicians and journalists. Okay. And once the thing is about Prohibition and about a lot of the Irish gangs at that time was they didn't like prostitution. They were very much practicing Catholics. So, and like I say, goes for the Italians as well, to a point. I do want to mention another person, though, as well, before we get too far into this, is Jaime Weiss. So you had this quick succession here from Dion O'Banion, who was killed in his flower shop. You had Vincent Drucci. Vincent Drucci, who was killed by the police. Yeah. One of the arresting officers, Dan Healy. Basically, there's a lot of, near fatal beating of Capone rival. Basically So he was punching asserted that the scuffle started after Healy punched Drucci, causing the driver to halt the car at the roadside, whereupon Healy had got out on the running board before drawing fire at Drucci, who was shot while sitting in the car, handcuffed with his hands in his lap. Hit in the arm, leg, and abdomen, collapsed, dying on the floor of the car. Yeah, I've seen photos. I saw the photo. I would show it, but it just looks like him, So Drucci was killed by the cops. Jaime Weiss takes over. And of course, his original name was Wojciech. He was Polish, but he carried around a Bible and rosary. So he was, once again, these are very, this is almost different, different sects of Catholicism, excuse me. So we have, this cavalcade of characters here. And we're just, like I say, we're going step by step here. Don't worry. I'm going to try not to go too fast here. But, so the North Side Gang were really early adopters, if we want to look at it in a capitalistic sort of way, early adopters of running booze, basically, and opening speakeasies and whatnot. And so you had this split where the North Side Gang were the early adopters. And we're going to go back to Big Jim Colosimo. Now, if you want to, there are plenty of other videos and you can study about Big Jim Colosimo as well. And Big Jim Colosimo was a pimp. Interestingly enough, I was watching a video about him. It was that he worked in newspapers as well. And he was known to throw a slug at somebody and get them the hell out of the way so that they could sell newspapers. But basically, he made his money through being a pimp and, doing other illegal activities as well, such as there was one of his prostitutes, sex worker, whatever. But yeah, one of the prostitutes that he had was going to snitch, and they had her killed while in jail. They fooled the cops by doing that. But anyway, by this point, Big Jim Colosimo, in the early 1920s, was basically saying, I want to get out of this game, I'm making enough money as it is. Why do we need to get into running booze? Oh, shoot, let me do that right quick. Yeah, that's okay. Give me a moment. So that leads us to Johnny Torrio. Johnny Torrio was a very intelligent guy, born in Italia. And he ended up working for Big Jim Colosimo. I'll put a picture of him here. Un memento. There we go. Almost forgot about it. A lot of characters here. So this is Johnny Torrio. And Johnny Torrio was a very smart businessman. Very good with numbers and that sort of thing. Very, like I say, was able to really manipulate the systems at the time. And so he brought along, and his protege was none other than Al Capone. So just to briefly touch on this, like I say, we could go on for hours and hours talking about it. Like I say, there's literally this lady who did a pretty good 2-hour, broke it up into 2 videos, basically 2-hour and 10-minute video on the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and all the different threads. There's some things that I heard she left out, but we're going to let that go. So we have Mr. Al Capone, who came from a fairly well-to-do family. In Brooklyn, New York. Father was a barber. Her mother was, these are both very, very devout Catholics. Sorry, my mind is gone. Very devout Catholic family, but he was always a street kid. And he joined a group called, I got this from a documentary I watched. This is a History Channel one, by the way, that they used to show, but they don't do it anymore. And he was part of a gang called the 40 Thieves. He's with the 40 Thieves and eventually joined the 4 Points gang as well. Or they kind of like the one that you saw in in that Leonardo DiCaprio movie. But I imagine it's a similar type thing. But anyway, you had Al Capone doing that. It's ironic, of course, because Al Capone's brother, I believe, became a sheriff. That's a whole different story. So he had another brother who also worked for him, Ralph Capone, as well. But that, I'm not gonna delve into it. We're just gonna try to lay out these cast of characters, tell the story, and then move on. So Al Capone really looks up to Johnny Torrio. Torrio is basically saying about Big Jim Colosimo, we're losing out on a lot of money because O'Banion on the north side is selling booze. This is, the Volstead Act just came in and all that business. We can make a lot of money with these speakeasies. And he says, no, I have my wife. Why do I want to give that up? And so, basically, you had another character who named Frankie Yale. Now, Frankie Yale was kind of a guy who stepped up and took care of Al Capone back in New York. And the thing is that basically what happened with Al Capone was basically that he had killed somebody in Brooklyn. And so what happened is that he decided to start anew in Chicago. So Frankie Yale was obviously still a friend, this and that. He was involved with his own stuff, but he was out of town. It was a lot harder for the cops to track people down. So what occurred is Frankie Yale came up to Chicago and killed Big Jim Colosimo. So now you have Johnny Torrio running the show on the south side. Like I said, you can find this information fairly easily, but I thought that I would cover this a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and see here. Where's that Johnny Torrio photo? I missed it. Oh, here we go. Sorry. So Johnny Torrio is in charge. And so a lot of it, obviously, you think about the geography. Chicago is right there. You think about it today, there's a lot of connection between Canada and Illinois. And more specifically, a lot of the comedians and all that, they got their start in Chicago and like Second City and all that sort of thing. You get into like John Candy, whatnot. I just use that as an example because there's a lot of Canadian whiskey. Because obviously, alcohol wasn't banned in Canada. So you could get all that good stuff and bring it down. So this was a very common thing. You could also make your bathtub gin, your rot gut, and all that. But obviously, if you have a good place to make liquor, then you do it. Now, the story with Johnny Torrio, I'm just going to simplify it here, is basically, now this is what I've heard in this History Channel documentary, but basically, what happened with him is that he was going to make a deal selling, basically, making a deal with Dion O'Banion and the Northside Gang to say, hey, stop, attacking my distillers and stop attacking my guys. And basically, they tried to kill Torrio. So it was a pretty serious attempt on his life. And basically, Johnny Torrio said, I'm done. Okay. So from there, like I said, this is very cursory. We're not going to dig into all the things. So at this point, now we have Al Capone as the leader of the South Side Gang. And like I say, in general, Al Capone was seen as a soft guy in some ways. Like I say, he was still a violent killer. He was in the Harvard Inn, which was the bar opened by Frankie Yale. And basically he was saying to a woman, hey, you got a nice ass, sweetheart. And what happens? Guy gets mad. Her BF gets mad, cuts him across the face. That's how he got Scarface, because, there were other reasons, but I think that that's the actual one. So what happens now? So we have this back and forth going on between the North Side and the South Side. There's a lot of money to be made. And, like I say, if we want to look at this from a socialist standpoint, this is basically the lumpen proletariat fighting amongst themselves. And in some cases, you could even say petty bourgeoisie, depending. But, like I say, if I was more read on socialism, then okay. So now what happens? Well, now what happens is that, we go through Dion O'Banion getting killed, Vincent Trucci getting killed, Jaime Weiss takes over. So Jaime Weiss takes over, and really wants to knock out Al Capone. And what happened with him is that on October 11, 1926, Weiss and 4 of his men were cited there at the murder trial. Sought an alliance with this Joe Saltis. Polak Joe. Oh, wow. Even though he was Hungarian. It's okay. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Weiss and his men left for their State Street headquarters, sorry. Quintet parked their cars on Superior Street and rounded the corner to cross State. As they did, 2 gunmen hid in a nearby rooming house, opened fire with a submachine gun. Weiss and Murray were fatally wounded by the first burst. William O'Brien was hit 4 times and staggered into a nearby stairwell. At the initial sound of gunfire, panicked Sim Peller drew his .38 and instinctively fired a shot in the general direction of the shooters. This bullet unintentionally struck Weiss as he collapsed onto the sidewalk. Peller and Jacobs, both wounded, staggered back the way they had come. Bullets followed them the whole way, and some chipped the cornerstone of the Holy Name Cathedral directly across the street. Weiss was buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery. This is interesting because, the same place as Al Capone and Dion O'Banion. Like I said, there's something, too, that a lot of these documentaries will mention. And so this is where they'll spend thousands of dollars and have thousands of people follow and have these immense, caskets and shows and everything else like that. It's like Mardi Gras or something like that. It's huge, huge shows. And, so what happens then? Then we go on to another else than Bugs Moran. Bugs Moran was a safecracker. he wasn't that smart of a guy. But he said, we're going to get back at Capone. Now, I believe it was during Jaime Weiss's reign or it was during Bugs Moran's reign. But basically what they did is Al Capone was at a hotel. And they had a fleet of vehicles. And what Bugs Moran's guys did was they had their Tommy guns, their Thompson submachine guns, fire blanks for the first few cars. And they were like, holy crap, oh no. And they thought, they would trick them, get their heads down, and then the next few cars had live rounds that they had. And I think some of, Capone's guys got killed, but basically, Capone was not killed. So what happened after that? So you had this plan of attack of who was, we're going to get back to the North Side gang. How are we going to do it? Another guy I want to bring up too, just as a side note, is this guy, Jack Greasy Thumbs Gussig. Jack Greasy Thumbs Gussig worked for a lot of gangsters, including Meyer Lansky for a time. And it's interesting, this is just a side note, that basically, even though Al Capone, was a criminal and gangster, he didn't approve of anti-Semitism. Greasy Thumbs Gussig was a slob. He would eat something and it would be, he didn't really like baths and whatnot. He always was a droopy guy, but he was the guy who paid everybody out. He was the accountant. And just kind of a side note that he, kind of had these ideas and everything else like that. So yeah, just kind of a side note, just to kind of say, I think that Greasy Thumbs Gussig obviously is somebody to it's important to mention. Let me continue on here. So in the 1967 film directed by Roger Corman, one of his only major studio films, it kind of shows how Jack McGurn, an associate of Al Capone, was the guy who really organized stuff. And this is the basis that I'm going to go on. I encourage you to do your own research on the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But nonetheless. So we had Jack McGurn organize a lot of this stuff, at least in the film. It's interesting, of course, because Jack McGurn threatened to snitch, basically, when he was hard up for money. They killed him at a bowling alley, also on Valentine's Day. Double check here. Yeah, February 15th, 1936. So 7 years after 7 years bad luck, right? And that what they always say? He was killed at the bowling alley, though. Like I say, he had, his women, and he was chased down and everything. Vincenzo Antonio Garibaldi, excuse me. And so he was part of the Black Hand extortionists, this and that. The blonde alibi, basically his girlfriend, Louise Rolfe. They spent the whole day together. If you've seen pictures of her, she kind of looks like, what's the name of that actress? I can't think. You know what? Who cares? Blonde gal. But, who cares? Okay, anyway. But yeah, basically he was kind of on the list of the FBI. Revealed that singer Bing Crosby, who frequently played golf in Chicago, was one of McGurn's golfing partners. Oh, really? Yeah, he was arrested, I think, 1933 because of but yeah, he was a big-time golfer. Playing much better the second day, the group of burly officers accosted McGurn on the 7th green and told him he was under arrest under a warrant issued the day before under the criminal reputation law. He was accompanied by his wife, the glitzy blonde alibi, Louise Rolfe, wearing a tight, thin white dress and sporting a 3-carat diamond ring. She approached the policeman and snapped, whose brilliant idea was this? McGurn politely asked to finish his round. Amused, the plainclothesman agreed and became part of his gallery. But the police presence began to unnerve McGurn, and the game suddenly went sour. He came in with a 16 par over 86 for a 36-hole total of 169, 14 strokes above making the cut. Huh. Less than 3 years later, McGurn, by then impoverished and abandoned by his fellow gangsters, was assassinated by 3 men with pistols on February 15, 1936, one day after the 7th anniversary of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He was bowling at the 2nd Floor Avenue Recreation Bowling Alley at 805 North Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. The killers tossed a Valentine card with this ironically prophetic poem to his body. You lost your job, you lost your dough, your tools, your cars, and your handsome houses. But things could still be worse, you know. At least you still have your trousers. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny, even I have to say. He also had Frank Nitti as well. I don't feel like getting his picture. But yeah, Frank Nitti was also seen as a guy who was kind of a big-named, killer, of course, and everything else. But he was seen as kind of a friendly sort of guy. But yeah. So Jack McGurn allegedly came up with that's Big Jim. I meant to find Fred Killer Burke. So Fred Killer Burke was one of the guys who was going to be the killers. They staked out this SMC Cartage Company, which was the headquarters of the North Side Gang by this point. And so it no longer stands anymore. I think that there's just trees there now. I think that there's literally just a little park there now. At what was the address of that place? I'm trying to think. Let's see here. Yeah, 2122 North Clark Street in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago's North Side. Okay, so we're going to kind of go through the list here of folks who got killed. I'm just going to kind of go through this backwards of the list of the people that I do have. So we have Adam Heyer, who was a business manager for Bugs Moran's North Side Gang. He also did the dog races, so that was one of their businesses. You had Albert Kachelik, also known as James Clark. He was a German guy. I think that he was from, I'm going to say, Silesia. And, was also he was just an enforcer, really. And you had John May. I do have a photo of him. John May, who was the mechanic, who was just asked basically, I understand that you got a kid and whatnot, but you want to come out here and do some work for us, fix these cars? Okay, why not? So let's continue on from there. We also have, let me see what we got here. The Gusenberg brothers, Frank Gusenberg and Peter Gusenberg, who were also killed. You also had Reinhard Schwimmer, who was an optician who hung out with Bugs Moran's North Side Gang. I guess he just kind of gave up on it. I guess he liked to hang around gangsters. A lot of people don't really, like I said, there's plenty of stuff that could be taught. I mean, you could make all sorts of assumptions nowadays, but yeah. Let me make sure I'm going down the list here. So you had Peter Gusenberg, Frank Gusenberg, Adam Heyer, Reinhard Schwimmer, Albert Weinshank, who managed several cleaning and dyeing operations for Moran. His resemblance to Moran is allegedly what set the massacre in motion before Moran arrived, including the clothes that he was wearing. Yeah, basically it was snowing, as it does, just as it is now. And basically is Albert Weinshank. Let me see if I can find a picture of him. Here we go. So here's a comparison. This is him on the left, and that's Bugs Moran on the right. And he wore a dark green overcoat, which looks similar to Moran's. And basically, the guys that were looking out across the street, who had spent months watching this happen, basically gave the call. And you had the infamous group here, which some say, of course, included Fred Killer Burke, who died in 1940. Basically what happened is that they were going to there was a setup of promise for Canadian whiskey. That was the whole business, is that they were going to get some Canadian whiskey and they were going to get some money for it. And so what happened then? Most of the Moran gang arrived at the warehouse by approximately 10:30 a.m. Moran was not there. He felt kind of nervous, and he was like, I don't know if I should do this. But yeah, having left his Parkway Hotel apartment late, he and fellow gang member Ted Newberry approached the rear of the warehouse from a side street when they saw a police car approaching the building. Okay, so this is the whole plan of it. Is basically they saw it as a raid. And if you watch the 1967 film, basically you had Schwimmer come up and was like, he had some money out ready to pay off the cops because they were notoriously corrupt under Big Bill Thompson, the Chicago mayor. Vote early and vote often was his slogan. But anyway, so basically they were going to get this booze in. 2 loads of stolen Canadian whiskey. Gusenberg brothers were supposed to drive up 2 empty trucks to Detroit to pick up 2 loads of stolen Canadian whiskey. All of the victims, and they stole this from Detroit's Purple Gang. All of the victims were dressed in their best clothes, with the exception of John May and other gangsters at the time. Okay, yeah, they were dressed nice. They were wearing their finest drip, as we would say. And basically, Capone's lookouts likely mistook one of Moran's men for Moran himself, probably Albert Weinshank, who was the same height and build. The physical similarity between the 2 men was enhanced by their dress that morning. Both happened to be wearing the same color overcoats and hats. Witnesses outside the garage saw a Cadillac sedan pull up. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on here. So, where we last left off is we were talking about the fake raid that was coming. Now, who was a part of this? Allegedly, we're not 100% sure, but you had Jack Killer Burke. You also had the Anselmi twins, who worked for Al Capone. And you also had, let me take a look here right quick. You had Fred Killer Burke. I think I said something else, but yeah. You also had the Anselmi twins and allegedly a couple of Chicago cops who wanted to get revenge for the death of a child, I believe, one of their children. So there's a lot of kind of wiggle room about what happened with that. Let's go ahead and get the story correct, though. So 4 men emerged and walked inside. 2 of them dressed in police uniform. The 2 fake police officers carried shotguns and entered the rear portion of the garage, where they found members of Moran's gang and collaborators Reinhard Schwimmer and John May, who was fixing one of the trucks. The fake policemen then ordered the men to line up against the wall. They then signaled the pairs in civilian clothes who had accompanied them. 2 of the killers opened fire with Thompson submachine guns. One with a 20-round box magazine, and the other a 50-round drum. Oh. They were thorough, spraying their victims left to right and even continuing to fire until all 7 had hit the floor. 2 shotgun barrel blasts afterward all but obliterated the faces of John May and James Clark, according to the coroner's report. Yeah, basically is that, he gave, John May gave out one little, and they wanted to make sure, and bam! Very messy. To give the appearance that everything was under control, the men in street clothes came out with their hands up, prodded by the 2 uniformed policemen. Inside the garage, only survivors in the warehouse were May's dog, Highball. Very sad story with this. I'll just briefly mention this. Basically, Highball was put down afterwards. Very sad. Like I say, I don't want to upset my subscribers, but it was very, very sad. So don't worry, I will bring it back to SMC Cartridge Company so you don't have to see that. So what happened after that? And Frank Gusenberg, despite 14 bullet wounds, He was still conscious, but died 3 hours later, refusing to utter a word about the identities of the killers. The Valentine's Day Massacre set off a public outcry which posed a problem for all mob bosses. And so, of course, everyone was saying, well, this had to be Capone. Everybody knew it was Capone, but nothing could really stick. And it wasn't until, of course, the issue of tax evasion came up, and that's what really got him. But this was kind of the start of it because of this killing. By this point, as everyone knows, is that, basically Al Capone had dementia through unprotected sex and was, just kind of loopy in the head. I'm trying to think of what it is specifically. Oh, almost there. I can't, like I say, this, who knows, I probably haven't. Failing health and death, yeah. Syphilis, there we go, yeah, syphilis. Paralysis caused by late-stage syphilis. Hopkins refused to admit him, but yeah, even though he was married to an Irish woman, he liked to go out and drink and have fun and, bang bang boots from the Bronx to Bolivia, as Notorious B.I.G. said. And, these men passed away. Most of them were ironically buried in the same place or in Mount Carmel Cemetery, same place as Al Capone. Al Capone's gravestone is covered by a huge privacy shrub, basically, so that people can't see it. So it's one of those things. So what happened to the Northside Gang? Well, it kind of fell apart. There's nothing left. Everyone else was dead. Bugs Moran basically was just like, oh crap, I'm screwed now. He went back to safecracking. He got locked up for forging some checks, basically, and he ended up getting locked up and passed away in 1956. I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah. Basically, Bugs Moran was 1957, yeah. 1957, yeah, he was busted, for selling checks, and he was paroled in 1956, but was immediately arrested for his role in the 1945 bank robbery of a bank in Ansonia, Ohio. He was sentenced in 1957 to 10 more years in prison. Died of lung cancer a few months into his 10-year sentence at Leavenworth, Kansas, and he was buried, no one really, it's just kind of buried somewhere in Kansas. So that's kind of the story that happens here. That happened on February 14th, 1929. It all happened here at SMC Cartage Company, whatever is left of it now. And it kind of speaks to the time, but also can speak to something more, is it, treachery and everything else, and that, this is how, people always say crime doesn't pay or living the fast life, this sort of thing. I think it's interesting to think about. Another interesting little side note that I have never heard in a documentary, and I'm going to go ahead and put it here, that way y'all will know, is that there is a gun runner named Peter von Francius. Peter von Francius operated in Chicago and sold a lot of these Thompson submachine guns to both the Northside Gang and the Southside Gang. I'm surprised nobody really talks about that too much. That would be more fascinating. And Peter von Francius, also, this is just an example of his catalog that I saw. He apparently had an office at 608 Diversey Parkway in Chicago, Illinois, which is now the location of a Quiznos. Not a Quiznos, a Chipotle, excuse me. It's kind of there's a big monstrous, ugly building there. But yeah, I think it's something that, we look at on a more of a socialist lens, that we'll see that these folks are just fighting over money and power and influence. Al Capone, and Dan O'Banion and Bugs Moran, if he was smarter, all used the system in different ways. Al Capone, when the Depression really hit hard, came out and gave out turkeys. This is something that influenced the movie. Oh my goodness, I can't think of it now. Again, it's one of my favorite movies too. New Jack City. And, that bit where, Nino Brown is coming out and giving out turkeys. That was influenced by Al Capone, who did the same thing. So Al Capone was able to, was very much a glad hander, very much somebody who, could, play to the public very well. And, of course, eventually the syphilis got him. But it's one of those things that really needs to be put into perspective, where these are the sorts of battles that go on. And we saw the evolution of it, where, these flashy, fancy folks will always get caught. Whereas the folks that, and sometimes it's all on faith, but a centralized system of one guy who runs the show isn't really the best way, because you'll see with the commission that occurred in New York with people like Lucky Luciano, various families, you'll have the, I can't think of it, the Vincente family, or these, I can't think of the names of the families offhand, but, the friends of well, god damn, it's going to bug the hell out of me. Let's see here. Mafia families of New York. In New York, there we go. Mafia families in New York, there we go. Okay, the five main ones: Gambino, Lucchese, Genovese, Bonanno, and Colombo. There we go. And of course, you had people like, the Teflon Don, who were very much, he was a very flashy guy as well. He was known as the Teflon Don. He was a very slick guy. Now, of course, like I say, they had their fingers in all the different pies, Over 3,000 members and associates still left. You had Lucky Luciano, who cut a deal with U.S. Naval Intelligence, and eventually basically got back to Sicily and was able to, continue on with his bad stuff. But yeah, continue on with, with prostitution and everything else. Gregory Scarpa, a capo in the Colombo family, had been recruited by the FBI to help find the bodies of 3 civil rights workers who had been murdered in Mississippi. Oh, yeah, this is the Mississippi in 1964. Yeah, she testified that Scarpa had threatened a Klansman by placing a gun in the Klansman's mouth, forcing the Klansman to reveal the locations of the bodies. Similar stories of mafia involvement in recovering bodies. Everyone's a Fed, aren't they? Everybody's a damn Fed. Everybody's a daggum Fed, aren't they? Oh boy. But yeah, it speaks to that sort of mindset, doesn't it? And of course, like I say, the commission, working with everybody, making their money from Kansas City to Las Vegas to Cuba. There's a lot of this stuff that went back and forth. And there, like I said, I could go on for hours and hours. Don't worry. We're not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this down. It was about how long that I wanted to cover it, but there are so many different angles to do this. And once again, I implore you, if you want to study more, please do. Definitely study more about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and all the different threads going in between it. There's so much else I could cover, but I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to stumble my way through this worse than I did with this. But yeah, this is going to probably turn out to be maybe a close to an hour video. Hopefully it won't be too boring. Maybe I'll put some audio over it. You want me to put some audio? I think I will. I'll put some audio over this. When I edit this down a little bit, because there are some bits where I had to do it in 2 parts. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. And like, share, and subscribe is all the YouTubers do. And yeah, like I say, I'll see how the weather is and how everything goes to stream hopefully on Monday. Then I will do it that way. So hopefully y'all will enjoy that. So see you later and goodbye. And be cautious of these folks who talk about the lumpen proletariat as if they are the end all to be all. Yeah. Anyway, see you later. Goodbye.
A few hours after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the newspapers managed to locate Moran, something the police have not yet been able to do.
Just a heavy cold. I thought I'd better take care of it.
Where were you, Mr. Moran, when it happened?
Out of town.
How long do you expect to be laid up?
Well, can't say for sure. Maybe a day or two.
Did you know the cops are looking for you, Moran?
I can't imagine why. Nothing I can tell them.
This gonna put you out of business?
You must be a little mixed up, buddy. I happen to be in the real estate business. Oh, yeah, I knew some of those fellas. Just to talk to, you know. I even read where it said they were working for me. You can't believe everything you read in the newspapers.
Mr. Moran, there are a lot of people around town who are saying it was actually the police who killed those 7 men. Do you think it's possible?
You must be new around here, mister. Only Al Capone kills like that.
Well, make yourselves a drink. I'm always glad to have you people drop around. But believe me, this is one time I'd like to know the answers.
Mr. Capone, I wonder if you saw those awful pictures of those men in the newspapers.
I glanced at them. Terrible.
If you don't mind telling us, Mr. Capone, where were you when it happened?
Why, right here in Miami. In fact, I was in a meeting with your district attorney that same morning.
Do you know this Mr. George Moran personally?
I met him once, a few years back. I doubt if I'd recognize him on the street.
The Chicago authorities insist you were behind the massacre. Any comment on that, Mr. Capone?
Well, I'm not surprised. They blamed everything on me since the fire.
Did you hear what Bugs Moran told the Chicago papers? He said only Al Capone kills like that.
Yeah? Well, I'll tell you what Al Capone says. And you can quote me. They don't call that guy Bugs for nothing.
Public indignation at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre brings to a halt the most notorious era of open gang warfare in American history. Later in the century, the gangs will rebuild so that by the 1960s their power will be far above that of the 20s. Once more, law enforcement agencies will be aware of the names of the syndicate leaders. And once more they will not prosecute them, awaiting perhaps the moment when the public will demand, as it did in 1929, that the criminals be brought to justice. No one is ever brought to trial for the slaughter of the 7 men in this garage. But within 19 months, all 4 of the killers will themselves die of violence. On the evening of May 7, 1929, John Scalise and Albert Anselmi are invited to a banquet at the mansion of Al Capone, unaware that he has discovered their plot to murder him and take over his empire.
I want to make a toast to my good friends, Giovanni Scalisi and Alberto Anselmi.
Salud.
Hello. May you rot in hell!
the two supposed police officers involved in the massacre, Boris Chapman is shot to death on January 5, 1930, while attempting to rob a St. Louis jewelry store. The body of Adolf Moeller is found in a pond 12 miles south of Joplin, Missouri on September 8, 1930. Vincenzo de Mora, alias Machine Gun Jack McGurn, is murdered in a Chicago bowling alley on February 15, 1936, almost exactly 7 years after the St. Valentine's Day massacre he masterminded. George Clarence Moran disappears from Chicago soon after the mass murder of his followers. While serving a 10-year sentence for bank robbery in the federal penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas, he dies of lung cancer on February 25, 1957. Alphonse Capone, while he is never tried for complicity in the St. Valentine's Day massacre, his role as the man behind it goes unquestioned. 3 months later, he is in prison, and more than half of the remaining 18 years of his life are spent in federal penitentiaries. On January 25, 1947, Alphonse Capone, his mind gone, his body ravaged by syphilis, dies in his sleep. On February 4, his body is interred in the family plot in the Chicago cemetery.